Chapter 22. The Possum Piggybank. Australia is full of mammals with pouches: kangaroos, wallabies, and wombats. They're known as marsupials. West Virginia is home to only one species of marsupial, the lowly possum. Possums have the distinction of being the only animal in the state with a pouch. They also have more teeth packed into their jaws than any other mammal. But their crowning feature has to be their homeliness. In nature's beauty pageant, they come in dead last. They have wet pink noses, two beady little eyes, pink and black ears, and dirty gray fur. They drag a long, scaly tail behind them as they search for garbage or dead animals to eat. They also happen to be one of the dumbest animals in the forest. Eddie and the boys had saved up their money and bought a have-a-heart trap. They'd seen it in the back of Boy's Life magazine. It was a rectangular box made of wire with a door on either end that caught animals alive. Inside was a movable tray that held the bait. When an animal entered, it stepped on the tray and the doors dropped. The boys would go out into the woods searching for likely-looking spots and set their trap. They'd smear some peanut butter on the pan and prop the doors open. Then they'd return home to wait. In the morning, they'd race out to the trap, hoping to find some exotic wildlife. Most of the time, the trap would be empty. But the times it did hold something, it was usually just a possum. "Hey, we got something!" Just another old possum. Well, then a plan began formulating in Eddie's mind. What if he and his brothers tried to tame one? He'd heard the old boast about folks living so far back in the holler they used possums for house cats. What if it could really be done? So they carried the trap to the barn and gathered round as Eddie slowly opened the cage door and gingerly grabbed the disgusting tail. He figured the head, with its 50 teeth, was still inside the cage. While Scotty and Jimmy held one end of the cage, Eddie slowly extracted the possum. It didn't want to come out. It held onto the tray, the sides, the door, before finally letting go. When it did, it swung back and came a hair of grabbing Eddie by the breechy leg, but he quickly hoisted it out of range. The possum, being a marsupial, has a special tail. Besides being very ugly, it is also prehensile, which means it can grab a limb with it and hang upside down. Truth is, possums will often sleep hanging upside down, so this particular possum wasn't too worried as it hung there. It tried once or twice to twist around and climb up its own body so it could sink some of its teeth into Eddie's wrist, but he managed to shake it back down. After a few minutes, it relaxed, and so did Eddie. The boys gathered around and one after another began to reach out and touch their possum, just momentarily at first, and always on the side away from the teeth. The possum jumped nervously the first few times, but after a while it seemed to understand they meant it no harm, and it settled down. Within a half hour, the boys were petting its back without fear. They carried it to the back porch of the house, where they kept an old refrigerator carcass laid on its side for moments just such as these. They dropped their possum inside and covered the top with mesh wire. As they gazed on their new pet, it began to undergo a mysterious transformation. Maybe it wasn't quite as ugly as they'd first thought. Its fur began to look a bit more silver to them than gray. Its eyes looked more like ebony beads. Its pink little nose matched its pink ears, and that tail, well, maybe it would clean up with some of Mom's dishwashing soap once they got it a bit more tame. In time, that possum was just as used to the boys as they were to it. It would let them pick it up and carry it around. They did manage to wash its tail, which was only a limited success, It was still pretty hideous, but while washing its tail, they discovered that their possum was a she. How did they know? Because she had a pouch. Only female possums have pouches. They use them to carry their babies around. Well, how convenient to have a pet with a pouch. One day the boys decided to play a trick on their friends in Racine. They tucked a couple of quarters into the possum's pouch and trooped out the door. They hiked the dirt road into town, crossed the trade tracks and the steel bridge, and arrived at the gas station where there was a pop machine. As luck would have it, their friends, Ricky and Bud, were hanging around the gas station. "Hey, what's that thing?" asked Ricky. "Yeah, does it bite?" added Bud. "Oh, this? This is our pet possum. You know, we live so far back up the holler we use them for house cats," replied Jimmy nonchalantly. Said Ricky. "Are they any good?" "Oh, yeah," said Eddie. "They're great. Here, let me show you." With that, he turned the possum upside down and shook her. 2 quarters fell from her pouch, and without missing a beat, Eddie inserted them into the pop machine. There was a stunned silence for a moment. Ricky looked at Bud. Bud looked at Ricky. Then, simultaneously, they said, "Dang! I'd gotta get me one of them things." Eddie took a swig from the icy bottle and passed it to his brothers, along with a wink.